I don't even know where to begin. This is easily the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I've told the story 1,000 times in person, but I've only written it once before. This takes place some years ago, when I was 17 and in my junior year of high school. People's names will be changed, including my own, but no one ever really cares about that anyways. Back in 2007, when the story takes place, I had just gotten out of school that Friday. As per my usual, I would be going to the next town over to see my boyfriend and his friends that night. Even though I knew that some shit they did there would be beyond fucked up, I still went over. Probably to get my weekly laughs. And no, I wasn't laughing with them. They almost never laughed about the same things I did. I could go on and on with the stories I've heard from people, and my own personal accounts, about the literal insane things they would do at my now ex-boyfriend's friend's house. A few years before I met them, these people started what they called, and literally believed to be, a coven. In reality, their house was more like a dirty brothel that even Littlefinger wouldn't touch with a 9.5-foot pole. They didn't, and still don't even know what a coven really means, and just began messing with things they knew nothing about, and also becoming nutters. Please keep my childhood ignorance in mind as the story progresses. After returning home from work, I got ready and headed to the next town over. I have always loved driving, the windows down as you blast music, being hit in the face with the dancing air, but every time I crossed into this town, for some reason, I just wanted to roll my windows up. Everything about this place just felt caked in an uncomfortable unknown. I'm not sure if any of you have ever visited a place like that, but once you do, it never really leaves you. The drive wasn't very long, and I finally found myself turning into the back road dirt driveway. I pulled my car into one of the few parking spots left and prepared myself to get out. Almost everyone was there this time. The house was packed with these people. Some of them, when the time was right and the night was bullshit enough, ran into the woods screaming at the top of their lungs pretending to be vampires. Others jumped onto each other, holding knives to each other's throats because they were possessed, taunting demons and playing with Ouija boards expecting their own results. The point is, they were never into actually seeking any real truth. They were into seeking negative attention, and in all the wrong ways. I pushed through the crowd of half-strangers, calling out to my then-boyfriend. "Justin," I yelled as I finally saw him. Of course, there was a gaggle of girls hanging off of him. This was Richard's house, after all. Can't walk 5 feet without an attempted orgy. "Estelle!" He broke his contact with them and met up with me. "People are starting to leave. Like I really cared. I was there to see him." "Oh, this is Amanda," Justin said to me as one of the arm huggers approached me. "Hi," I said curtly and began looking around for the only friends I had there. I knew this girl's type. I wasn't into this, and my friends were generally here for the same reason I was. "Lex, Abby," I called out to them and immediately ran up to my 2 best friends. "She's been on him all night," Abby told me, shooting Amanda her usual dirty look. "Whatever," I said. "She'll be yesterday's news tomorrow." Finally, though, people were leaving and the gaggle was thinning out, until it was just myself, Richard, Justin, Lex, Abby, our friend Cole, and Amanda. "I don't have anywhere to sleep tonight," I heard the world's most pathetic and obviously lying voice from behind as we made our way to the cars. It was Amanda. The group passed and Abby and I shot our boyfriends a look. "Well, I know you can't stay here. My parents won't allow it," Richard said. "But we could always go camping." Of course, the guys immediately perked up to this. "Yeah, where do you want to go?" Justin jumped in. "I can think of a really good spot I found," Lex said. He was also one of Justin and Richard's best friends since they were kids. "It's right across from my house. Just come to my place and we'll hike up there. I'll show you." This fell into place so quickly, you would have almost guessed they planned it. After gathering up the essentials, non-essentials, and packing the 2 large tents, we all planned to meet up at Lex's house, which is only a few-minute drive down the road. I wasn't entirely thrilled with the reason we were camping, but I've always loved camping, so the why didn't really matter to me. Everyone else went to set up while I made a run into our town with Abby to grab some things we needed. We hurried back to find Lex and Justin were waiting for us by their cars with Lex's younger brother, Joe. Richard, Cole, and Amanda were already at the campsite. "It's not far, only about a 20-minute hike," Lex told us as we locked up. "Joe wants to come too." We all nodded, laughed, and crossed the street into the thick woods. The moment you'd step foot into this place, there was a thick, palpable tension in the air. We pushed on through, though, no one ever really outwardly acknowledging it, out of fear of looking like one of the loons Richard had always had at his house. We passed large dead trees that died from lightning strikes on our steep journey, and we were met with many of the evening's forest sounds, as well as our own loud crunching footsteps. But nothing to really give the reason as to why everything felt more off than usual. And the further we went, the worse that feeling got. Some time passed, and eventually we were led into a large, clear opening. The sun still not quite set. "Oh, I looked down and saw a used fire pit. Looks like we weren't the only people that camped here. We made our way to the group, who had decided that one of our tents was going to house all of our food and weapons. Still not sure how that makes sense, and we were all going to occupy the other. Right before dinner, Justin pulled me aside and told me he wasn't feeling well, and that he was going to lie down. I told him I laid down with him, so he wasn't alone. The tent was close to everyone anyways. I'd still be a part of the fun. Not long after that, it began. Somewhere close, but not too close, we heard what sounded like a small tree or large branch snap, slowly. "Someone better tell Justin to stop cutting firewood," Richard laughed. Justin and I looked at each other and then sat up, revealing us in the tent. "I'm right here," Justin said. Everyone was there, too. We looked around for a moment at each other, and then all agreed it was probably just a tree falling. So, we continued to have a good time as the sun began to set. As the light began to leave us, we heard the exact same noise again. This time, we were convinced something was making noise. "All right," Cole said, speaking up for the first time and grabbing the axe. "I'm stopping this before it starts." He disappeared into the woods, and we could hear him yelling out and hitting things in a manner that would scare anything away. The people at Richard's house were one thing, but Cole was actually someone I wouldn't mess with. If anything was there, they're gone now. He chuckled, taking his seat again. Those words only brought comfort for a few minutes until, again, we heard the tree snapping. It was getting dark now, and Abby and I were starting to get uncomfortable, especially since there were no other sounds in the woods, not even quiet footsteps. "Okay." Justin stood up and rummaged through the tent. He pulled out a BB gun with skin-piercing rounds. "I have a gun! I will shoot you if you don't leave!" He yelled at the border of the opening and shot a few rounds at the ground and into the air. He stood for a moment as we all listened, and for a short while, we were convinced that had to be it. He sat back down next to me, all of us trying to laugh this off and continuing to give it reasonable explanations. This was extremely strange for Richard's crowd, but definitely not unwelcome in my eyes. I've always believed in the paranormal, but I don't fall for everyone's bullshit either. I honestly think that they were beginning to get afraid too, and didn't want to actually freak themselves out. We quickly tried to bring the mood back up and start to have a good time, as the sun was rapidly going down now. However, these moments continued to be shorter and shorter lived. This time, the noise we heard was different and much, much closer. Again, with no sounds of footsteps or even a small giggle to hint at kids messing around with us, we heard what sounded like a pile of rocks being dumped. Almost like a small rock waterfall. The sound scared all of us, but even more so a few seconds later when we heard the exact same thing across the opening on the other side of the woods. "What the fuck was that?" I jumped up. "I'm not messing around with this shit. One of you go scare these people away before I lose my mind." Justin, Cole, and Lex all grabbed weapons and disappeared into the woods. We heard shouting, clanging, and shooting. When they all came back, they were out of breath and trying to laugh. "That should," they began, but were quickly shut up by the rocks again. We all tensed up. The sound became more frequent and rapid, appearing at random parts of where the opening met the forest, as if to taunt us to inspect it under the protection of the fast-approaching darkness. It was next to us, then far away, then back again, then out of nowhere it was coming from all directions, still with no other occupying sounds. Not another goddamn sound was heard. This was the point where Abby, who thought herself a psychic, told me she really didn't think whatever was out there was a person or an animal. At the time, this meant a lot coming from her. We all crowded up in the center of the opening to be as far away from the edges of the woods as possible. "What the fuck? What the fuck is going on?" I began sobbing as the noises continued under the now dark sky. Occasionally, you could also hear a tree snapping as well. I fell to my knees as the almost entire group bordered Abby and I. "I don't know, Estelle, but we can't go back right now. We have to wait until morning." Abby tried to comfort me. "I'll find out if this was anyone at my school on Monday," Joe said under his angry teenage breath, scanning the tree line for anyone. "It isn't a person, Joe. How could it be a person?" Richard said, sitting in front of me and handing me one of his Chinese swords. "Take this. It will protect you." I looked at the sword for a moment and immediately threw it down. I spent years listening to this diphthong try and tell me things he knew nothing about. Now, I'm camping with him for the first time, and something like this happens. I've been camping since I was 5, and in some way, more secluded places than this. No, I was convinced he attracted this, whatever it was, somehow. What the fuck is a tangible item going to do to an intangible creature, you idiot? The sword hit the ground and everyone looked at me. But before I could go off on him, I heard a meek voice among everyone. I never told you guys how I found this spot, Lex began hesitantly. What does that mean? I responded harshly. The reason there's such a large opening here is because the town Satanists burned this section of the woods once, by accident, during a ceremony. I didn't think anything was going to happen. They used fire pit. Why didn't I question that before? This town's reputation for having animals strung up in the woods gutless every week was crazy enough. I can't believe I had been so careless as to not even bat an eyelash to the suggestion of camping in this town. You've never been here? And you fucking brought us here? What the fuck is wrong with you? I wanted to tear him limb from limb for even putting me there, let alone his younger brother. I'm sorry. He backed up a little as Justin and Abby comforted me. That's when we realized the noises stopped. Then we stopped and listened. And for a moment, there was absolute silence. But only for a moment. The noises kept on and off for hours and well into the night. I'll take watch. If I start to fall asleep, I'll wake one of you up, Richard said, zipping up the tent, this being one of his more sane and kinder moments. Eventually, I passed out from being so scared and exhausted. The noises kept creeping back up every time I felt a moment of safety. Somehow, the morning came without any incident. We all woke up to find Richard passed out in front of a burned-out fire. Looking around in the morning light, we barely spoke a word. As soon as Justin got me to my car, I sped home and swore I would never go camping with them again. So, let this stand as yet another testament to the unknown, and how you shouldn't ever fuck with shit you know nothing about, even if that means simply sleeping on grounds once used by Satanists. I'm here today writing this story, sharing my experience with you, but as I finish this story, I just want to leave you with an urge of caution. Don't tempt fate by fucking with the unknown, unless you are prepared to face the darkness.
That takes you really in. Just like that.
Just piss everybody off with that?
Yep.
Happy fucking New Year, everybody!
Are you scared, motherfucker?
Are you fucking scared yet? What's your fucking New Year's resolution? Is it to be scared more? Like and comment, subscribe 1,000,000 times! In the description.